Okay, we are rolling. We are rolling, brother. Champions of Champions Boxing Talk is back after a little bit of a hiatus. Gotta get back into the groove of doing these videos. So many stupid distractions. A lot of them not even important, but just niggly things that get in your way. Anyway, back to it. Final breakdown video. The first and only breakdown video, really. It's the best there is. It's the only one there is. Canelo Alverez v Sergey Kovalev. Canelo Alverez obviously stepping up 7 pounds heavier than he fought, super middleweight when he beat Rocky Fielding. Sergey Kovalev coming off a stoppage win against Anthony Yarde, but he was hurt very badly in the 8th round, and Anthony Yarde, in many people's book and in mine, was only a couple of quality power shots away from maybe dropping, if not stopping, Sergey Kovalev. So you think if Anthony Yarde is doing that, then you're in trouble against Canelo Alverez. But it is a pound-for-pound sport, isn't it? Probably Canelo Alvarez in every department is a greater fighter than Anthony Yarde. Pound for pound, probably Canelo Alvarez is a bigger puncher than Andre Ward. But there are weight classes. And there are weight classes for a reason. Right? The question is Canelo Alvarez as big a puncher? I know he's a better quality puncher than Anthony Yarde, because there's just so much experience at elite level. I know he's a better quality, not boxer, but puncher than Andre Ward. Crisper. And where Canelo's been fighting at, he does stop more people than Andre Ward. That is just a fact. But the thing is, does Canelo Alvarez at 175 pounds punch harder than Andre Ward and Anthony Yarde? That is the question. Right? As Shakespeare would say, to be or not to be, that is the question. Shane Mosley stopped Antonio Margarito. Now, you might think pound for pound, Manny Pacquiao and Shane Mosley, Manny Pacquiao is a bigger puncher. Manny Pacquiao didn't stop Antonio Margarito. Why? Because him being the smaller man going up there, he then needed to adjust and use volume to break Margarito down. Came close to stopping him a few times, but it was more accumulation rather than one punch power. Now, you've seen Manny Pacquiao hit Antonio Barrera. You've seen Manny Pacquiao hit Ricky Hatton. Smaller guys. And you saw pound for pound, he's probably a bigger puncher than Shane Mosley. But of course, when they're up there at the same weight, the power then becomes comparable because Mosley's a bigger guy. So, we also have to take this into consideration. Antonio Margarito landed some heavy blows on Manny Pacquiao, even though it was a fight that I feel Manny Pacquiao dominated. Manny Pacquiao took the shots. Manny Pacquiao took shots from Miguel Cotto. Manny Pacquiao took shots from Keith Thurman recently, didn't he? The question is, we know Canelo Alvarez has got a chin from where he's been fighting. He's took shots off welterweights successfully. He's took shots from Gennady Golovkin, a boogeyman. We're going to talk about him in a few minutes, by the way. He took shots from Gennady Golovkin, some clean ones. Particularly, do you know, the closer fight was the second fight between him and Canelo Alvarez. But Canelo actually took, I think, bigger shots in that second fight. But he took them. His chin held up, right? For whatever reason, his chin held up. So we know he has that chin. But that was 2 weight classes ago. Kovalev is a concussive puncher when he fights light heavyweights. Experienced light heavyweights. This is Canelo Alvarez's debut at light heavyweight. The two questions: can Canelo's power hurt Sergey Kovalev going up 2 weight classes? And can he take a punch going up 2 weight classes against Sergey Kovalev? You know, they're two different things, but the same thing in one, if that makes sense. Can you absorb and can you hurt? Those are the two questions. Because to me, Sergey Kovalev has great feet. He has a great jab. But at this moment in time, I think Canelo Alvarez is the better all-round fighter. Right? But Sergey Kovalev has two weapons that have been known to cause Canelo Alvarez issues: footwork and a jab. The issue for Sergey Kovalev is this: can his jab reach Canelo Alvarez's face quick enough? Right? Danny Jacobs, because he's a smaller guy than Sergey Kovalev, has faster hands. Danny Jacobs looked slow in the first 6 to 7 rounds against Canelo. It was only when Canelo Alvarez pace dipped that Danny Jacobs looked more in that fight in terms of speed. But early on, Canelo's upper body movement, head movement, was dodging Danny Jacobs' shots and jab in particular galore. And that's Danny Jacobs' hand speed. That's Danny Jacobs who lands with his speed on everybody early. Everybody. But against Canelo Alvarez, not only did Canelo defend very well, he was able to sort of drop his hands at times, move his head, his shoulders and upper body region, and get out the way of them jabs. Dodge them jabs with head movement. To Sergey Kovalev, as good a jabber as he is, might he be in the situation where he can't even land it? Now, Sergey Kovalev lands that jab. It is very specific, isn't it? It's very on the mark. It's more related to a power punch, a bit like Gennady Golovkin. It's more related to a power punch than a jab. It's like a crossbreed of rangefinder jab and power punch. And the odd thing about Sergey Kovalev's jab is it has variation. Some jabs are sort to soften the opponent up, and some are more stiffer and take opponents out, as Anthony Yarde found out. But might he be in a situation, because Canelo Alvarez looked fast against Jacobs early on. How fast might he look against Sergey Kovalev? Now, I know people say Canelo Alvarez will be slower because he's going up in weight. But you have to remember, what weight does Canelo Alvarez enter a boxing ring in? He doesn't go in there 160 pounds. He goes in there about light heavyweight. Right? So, I'm not so certain, I could be wrong, that the weight will slow Canelo Alvarez down enough. It might do. Who's to say? This is the thing with these, when fighters go up in weight classes. It's hard to sort of gauge and make certain predictions. Boxing is unpredictable as it is. I often say, in boxing, always be prepared to be right, but never be prepared to be wrong, because this is boxing. You play other sports, you play soccer, you play basketball, you don't play boxing. You live it, right? So, it's difficult to gauge because it is Canelo Alvarez's debut, right? If Sergey Kovalev can speed up that jab enough to cope with the smaller guy's head movement and upper body movement, I think he's got to sort of shoot for the chest. He can't be looking for that head specifically. I think he's got to shoot for the body as well, because Canelo Alvarez, his feet are going to be quick at that weight, potentially, right? If, though, Sergey Kovalev can find that jab, if Sergey Kovalev can use his footwork successfully against a guy who is going to be potentially quicker, but if he can compete there, he's in business. He is in business. Providing he can hurt Canelo Alvarez with ongoing right hands and power shots. If he can't hurt Canelo, he might be in a bit of trouble. You know? Going to the other side of the equation, Canelo Alvarez. Everybody is talking about this sense that Sergey Kovalev is way past his prime. And I think he's past his prime. But I've said on numerous occasions in different videos that sometimes veteran fighters always have one great last night in them. Right? Mike Kovalev, because he knows who he's fighting. He's not fighting Anthony Yarde. Right? As good as Anthony Yarde is potentially, Canelo Alvarez is the real deal. He's a pound-for-pound fighter. Kovalev may pull out all the stops he has left in this fight. That, hopefully, right? Hopefully, then you get a good fight. A great fight. But looking at it from Canelo Alvarez's perspective, the obvious weak point that has been pointed out about Sergey Kovalev is his body. Right? But you can't just walk in there and fire body shots. It takes a lot more than just to walk in straight lines and fire body shots. So what does Canelo Alvarez do? Well, boxing is about spacing, right? First of all. Canelo Alvarez, to successfully hurt Sergey Kovalev to the body, has to be on the front foot. Because when you're on the back foot countering with shots to body or head, there is not enough purchase on them shots. But when you're moving forward with momentum and your weight coming forward, you put double jeopardy on your shots. So Canelo Alvarez will have to use that head movement coming forward very well and be confident. He can parry, he can dodge, he can close down, he can fire. He has the power to hurt a light heavyweight, right? Early on, I think Canelo Alvarez is going to feel Sergey Kovalev's power out. In other words, I don't think he's going to walk onto it or anything like that. But he's going to be cautious and get a sense of what it's like in there. But if Canelo Alvarez can gain confidence that he can handle the power and the strength, then you might see Canelo Alvarez do what he did against Gennady Golovkin. And Canelo Alvarez's body shots in that fight, again, he was so close to Gennady Golovkin, who again has a long reach. Again, it's about spatial awareness. But Canelo was so close that Golovkin at times could not get full purchase on that jab. That, for me, is the best way for Canelo Alvarez. He doesn't want to be on the end of Kovalev's jab. He is a great counterpuncher, Canelo. But he might have to get Kovalev's respect in this fight. I think the blueprint of the second Gennady Golovkin fight might be the way to go for Canelo Alvarez after 2 or 3 rounds, if he gets confident that he can handle the strength. But the head movement has to avoid that jab. He has to close the ring down, right? Has to. Again, people are just talking like Canelo can go in there and blast to the body and leave himself wide open. You can't do that, right? And Canelo Alvarez will be aware he can't do that. His defense has got to be tight. His head movement has got to be spot on. Then, the key question, does that power travel up enough to hurt Sergey Kovalev's body? It's one thing Andre Ward doing it, right? And arguably, some of those shots were low. Well, arguably, definitely. But you have to listen to this. Andre Ward comes across as a gentleman, but he is a little bit of a dirty fighter. Canelo Alvarez is not a dirty fighter. Everything Canelo does is kind of smooth. Yes, there's a brutality about him, but he likes to do things smoothly and fairly. All right, controversial outside the ring, I get it. But the last time Canelo Alvarez was dirty in the boxing ring, can anybody tell me? He's not going to fight necessarily like Andre Ward, even if he is closing the ring down and going in there for a phone booth fight. It's going to be clean. The Gennady Golovkin second fight, Canelo Alvarez was in the fire, but he was very clean, right? So I'm not expecting Canelo Alvarez to purposely hit Sergey Kovalev low. It could happen because he's the shorter guy, but don't count on it because Canelo Alvarez does not fight like that. His style is he's a brilliant counterpuncher. Here's where, again, he may be in business. Combinations. One shot to the body might not hurt Kovalev, but we could see Canelo Alvarez put combinations together. Head and body. Body and body. Head and head, if that makes sense. He does have good variation. It may be a breaking down job. But the question is, can even combination punches hurt Sergey Kovalev? If it can, and again, Canelo gets confident that he can handle Kovalev's power, but what if the bigger guy gets confident that he can land, or I should say he can take the little guy's power? Then, does he then get so confident that he tries to walk through Canelo Alvarez? And let me tell you this, as a smaller guy, Kell Brook will tell you, it is a very lonely place when you can't hurt your opponent and he just walks through. In the end, he doesn't bother with fundamentals. He's just disregarding everything. He's so confident that you've got to throw until you can't throw no more and you're so tired, and he can hit you and break you, lean on you, things like that. This is, well, it either goes one or two ways for me. Number one, Canelo Alvarez's power does show up. His boxing skills do make the cut at, light heavy. And he breaks down a past prime Sergey Kovalev. Or outpoints him, but Kovalev is outmatched. Or Kovalev, because he's fighting the biggest name he's ever fought. Maybe Andre Ward is the best fighter he's ever fought. Though Canelo Alvarez is not finished yet, the story is still ongoing. But he's certainly the biggest name, and the eyes of the world are on Kovalev. Make no mistake, this is a David Goliath fight. This is actually, generally Canelo Alvarez in all his fights is under pressure to perform. He's the name. He's the name in this one, but the difference is, he's the bravo guy. He's the one that everyone's clapping for going up and taking this challenge. Right? The pressure is on Kovalev. He can't afford to be drinking. He can't afford to be partying. He's got to pull out all the stops, and he might do because, again, the eyes of the world are on him, and this is the biggest name he will ever face. So body shots are obvious. There's a bit of a Keith Thurman in Sergey Kovalev, but it's if Canelo Alvarez's power travels up. The jab has been an Achilles heel for Canelo Alvarez in the past. But you have to remember the speed of the guys that were catching him with the jab. Floyd Mayweather, very fast hands. Very fast hands. Lara, fast hands. Very fast hands. Amir Khan, super fast hands. Look at them first 6 rounds. But as he's gone up in weight, you see the other guys are slower. Golovkin did land a lot of jabs, but it was more down to Golovkin's accuracy and precision than speed. But Canelo Alvarez did avoid more jabs from Gennady Golovkin even than any opponent Gennady Golovkin has ever faced. Until, recently. So there's that to the equation. Kovalev, his power has to work for him. I think the ring IQ belongs to Canelo Alvarez. The defense, I think, belongs to Canelo Alvarez. The stamina, though, is a question. Which one? Because I think Kovalev gasses, I think Canelo gasses. Right? But if Canelo Alvarez cannot hurt Sergey Kovalev, if Sergey Kovalev can take Canelo Alvarez's punches and sort of make Canelo Alvarez throw more than he wants to, we may be in a scenario of, Margarito v. Miguel Cotto in the first fight. Conversely, if Sergey Kovalev cannot handle Canelo Alvarez's combinations, hand speed, accuracy, all-round finesse, head movement, footwork even, right? If you can't handle them, we could end up with a scenario where he looks very old indeed and just being outpointed, beat to the punch, very similar to De La Hoya and Manny Pacquiao. I don't see it being as brutal as that, but I can see a scenario where Kovalev is constantly being picked off. Right? So, I've said all the scenarios there, haven't I? There is something that is in the back of my mind, though. Gennady Golovkin just really struggled with Derevyanchenko. Some people had Derevyanchenko winning that fight. Me personally, I just about on the knockdown gave Gennady Golovkin that fight. Just about. But Gennady Golovkin's best days are beyond him. That's my opinion. But I also thought that when he fought Canelo Alverez. And Canelo Alvarez arguably lost one fight to Golovkin. Arguably lost the second. But it was closer. That Golovkin that Canelo Alvarez struggled with is the same version as the one that fought Derevyanchenko. Late 30s. Canelo didn't fight Derevyanchenko. Now I know styles make fights, but I wonder why. Canelo Alvarez looked like the man of steel when he come out of the Gennady Golovkin second match. Is Canelo Alvarez vulnerable? Golovkin looked vulnerable, but that vulnerable version of Golovkin, Canelo Alvarez struggled with. You have to bear this in mind. Might Kovalev and his team get confidence from that? Is Canelo Alvarez at his peak right now, or is there a tipping point where he could be slightly slipping as he's going up in the weights? Because looking at Golovkin v. Derevyanchenko, that was the guy that Canelo Alvarez struggled with twice. That version of Golovkin, virtually the same one that Derevyanchenko arguably did as well as Canelo against. So, it is difficult. When that thought come into my head, I thought, hang on a minute. If Kovalev is watching Golovkin struggle, he shouldn't just be worrying about what's happening with Golovkin. He should be gaining confidence about his fight with Canelo. Because Canelo Alvarez struggled with that guy, arguably lost to that guy. And that guy is not the Golovkin anymore that we knew. So bear that in mind. It's time to put our necks on the block. Who do I pick in this fight? I am banking on Canelo Alvarez to get the job done. By 7-5, something like that. I can't see him stopping Sergey Kovalev. I could see him making Sergey Kovalev tentative with fast shots to the body and the head movement, really throwing Kovalev off when he knows that this guy has the fastest upper body movement and head movement he's ever faced. That will make Kovalev tentative, confused, because let's face it, he did have a lot of success against Andre Ward, particularly in that first fight, right? But is that Kovalev around anymore? If it is, he still might have a problem with the speed, because Canelo Alvarez is a different style to Andre Ward. That head movement and upper body movement is a problem for Kovalev. He has to find that jab somehow. I'm thinking fire it down to the body, fire it at the chest. But if Canelo can avoid it, that will take down Kovalev's volume. And Canelo Alvarez is very sharp and accurate. He'll beat you to the punch. He's capable of it. I see a scenario like that where he takes this on points. Could it be controversial again? I don't know. I get a feeling it might not. I get a feeling that it'll be a clear 7-5. But of course, if Kovalev can land, if Canelo Alvarez's power is ineffective at that weight, we might see Canelo Alvarez take more punishment in defeat or victory. It could end up brutal either way for Canelo. He could win this by knockout, 7-5, but again, absorbing a big man's punch, because Canelo Alvarez's pride, he could be getting hurt and you wouldn't know it. But it's the accumulation. Will Canelo Alvarez be the same after this fight? I wonder. If Kovalev can land consistently, Canelo Alvarez has not faced a elite career light heavyweight like this, who is a pound-for-pound puncher. Not a pound-for-pound fighter anymore for me, but he's a pound-for-pound puncher. So I see Canelo finding a way to win, slowing sort of Kovalev down with body shots, but it to get scruffy for Canelo as Kovalev gets desperate, and it looking a very hard physical fight, but a clear 7-5. That's me, but I wouldn't be surprised if Kovalev does the business. If that jab just does sting Canelo, and the strength and weight plays a key role finally. Finally, this is the tipping point where, Roman Gonzalez broke at one point, didn't he, when he went up in weight? Everybody has their limits. Even Manny Pacquiao would have had his limits. Is this Canelo Alvarez's limit? We shall see. It could be, but I'm sort of edging Canelo Alvarez in this fight. Anyway, the grand return is over, and the fight will commence next week. And this is Champions of Champions Boxing Talk. I'm out, brother.